Hey everybody, welcome to Tuesday's episode of LonsTV. Before I get into the main review, I want to talk a little bit about these dead birds and the dead fish that have popped up. I think it was Arkansas, and then it was Louisiana, and all these birds, they died of trauma, so they don't know what did it. They just all sort of seem to have been flying and then dead and then dropped to the ground. So people are kind of freaking out. Obviously it's always like end times, apocalyptic stuff when weird things we can't explain in the natural world happen. I'm thinking there's probably some sort of rational explanation for this, and it's probably something along the lines of something we've done to fuck up these birds' environment or habitat or way of life. And when I say we, I don't mean like me and a few other guys. I mean like humanity. I don't know these birds specifically. I'm not sitting here scheming about how I can kill Arkansas birds during my off time. I know some of you probably thought that's what I'm doing, but I'm not. It's probably something climate change or pollution or radiation or something leaking into something or, acid rain. Or I don't know. Acid rain's a weird one. You don't hear about that anymore. But anyway, yeah, I'm sure it's something that we did that's man-made, that's killing them, and we just don't know what it is. I just don't think it's like end times biblical. It's probably nothing like the end of the world. And I actually think it's funny that there is biblical end times, really scary environmental shit happening all the time, and that doesn't really seem to set people off in this way. There is a mound of plastic in the Pacific Ocean so big it gets its own representative at the UN, and you don't hear about that ever. If you looked at pictures of Manhattan last week, it looked like Vail. You couldn't tell the difference between Manhattan and Vail, indistinguishable. That doesn't seem to set off people's we're destroying the entire environment. They're just East Coast, it's snow, Merry Christmas. It's that's the really horrifying stuff that's to come, these crazy storms that are happening now, these floods that wipe out large sectors of countries is happening, but none of that seems to be as big a deal as what happened to those 200 birds? Answer me that one. God, that's what happened. He's doing the Noah flood thing, but he's starting really small. He's picking one cluster, look at those squirrels, fuck those guys, bing, and then it's just gonna be that over and over again across the entire world. So yeah, birds and fish dead, sad, weird, we should figure it out, not end times related. Moving on, my main review today, that wasn't a review, that was a rant. My review today is going to be Quora. I feel like everybody all of a sudden is using Quora, that it was along for a while and people were using it was kind of interesting, and then in the last few weeks, it's sort of just all of a sudden now I'm getting followed 100 times a day by people, and it's really taken off just very quickly. I would say just since the new year, maybe a little before I started noticing all the buzz. I think maybe it was on a bunch of those sites to watch in 2011 lists, so people start catching up with what those sites are, and they want to hear about them and be, before. I want to be on the crest of the new wave of technology, of Q&A technology. So I figured I used to work on a Q&A site, Mahalo Answers, and I'm not going to give away any trade secrets because I don't know any. But I did want to just talk about it and some of the things I liked, some of the things I didn't like as much about the service. Obviously, a site like this, people are asking questions. They want to get good, insightful answers. It all lives or dies based on who's there. I mean, are there people in the community who are able to answer these questions? And I think one thing that makes it work really well now is that it's an early adopter tech crowd that got into it, and those are the kinds of questions they ask, and it really has taken off in that world. I mean, I can ask a question about Twitter, and if it's a good question, Everbiz may come along and answer it. I mean, I see Steve Case answering questions about AOL. You can actually have the people you're talking about come in and answer your questions, which is, really amazing and makes for a cool platform. And there was a few weeks ago when everybody was talking about Yahoo and their decision to shut down Delicious and some other products, and then Yahoo engineers started showing up and talking about how these decisions were made. So obviously, that's definitely a win. The thing is, I feel like this is the point at which a lot of startups, and I'm not saying this is true of Quora, but this is the point where a lot of startups start patting themselves on the back, tipping point, we made it. And this is the early hurdle. It's great, and you want to make it past this hurdle, but most people out there, the mainstream of American culture, they don't care about asking questions about Twitter. I mean, maybe they like Twitter, maybe occasionally they'll have a question about Twitter, but they want Kesha to answer their questions. And I feel like we saw this with Twitter. It was a tech nerd thing, and then all of a sudden, people who've been on it for a while, we started noticing celebrities, Shaq's on here now, and now they're mentioning it on television occasionally, and then it really makes it into the sort of the zeitgeist. And I think it's theoretically possible that Quora could do the same, but I'm not sure is there a Shaq or an Ashton or some cultural ambassador that's going to come along and start to use it and get people excited? Like if Oprah started using it, everybody would get excited. They would all have, a new Quora under their seats after the show, and it would be mainstream overnight. But, is that going to happen? And do celebrities want a venue where people can basically come and ask them any hideous, awful, embarrassing thing, and it's sort of out there in the world until they can get a hold of it? So I don't know. Those are interesting questions. I think we're still waiting to see if that's what's going to happen. I do think there are a few things right now that are kind of holding it back that I feel like may not prevent Quora from becoming like another Facebook or another Twitter, another big company on that level, Zynga. I think the main one being that they, like everyone else in the Q&A space or in the social Q&A space, they haven't figured out how to get all of your conversations together. Like, you go to Quora and you ask a question, and then you're asking the Quora community, and I can tweet it, and then that asks my Twitter community, and then I share my Twitter with Facebook, so that actually asks my Facebook community as well. But those three conversations are never going to combine. So really, I'm asking a question, and then I have to look in three different spots to see everybody's answer, and the whole point of it really is more like a discussion than just asking and answering, or at least at their best, I think sites are like that. And so that's never going to happen, and because it's never integrated. Like, nobody's ever figured out how to crack that nut, and that's a pretty complicated question, I think, and it has negative effects for Quora in a lot of ways. I mean, one of them being it's so linked into your social network in terms of broadcasting. I mean, they want you to sign up and add in your Twitter and your Facebook and tweet from Quora, and it brings people to Quora, so it benefits them that way. But it almost points out what a big flaw this is, because when they encourage you to ask your question on Twitter, immediately people start replying you on Twitter with answers. And it's like, man, I wish they could see the answers I'm getting over here. I wish all of these people could talk and see what each other was doing. And I could manually do it, like every time somebody leaves a question, retweet it so everybody on Twitter gets to see it. But that's not how you want to have a conversation. You just want to have it in one place. I don't know the answer. I don't propose to know the answer to that question. It's a very challenging question, but I do think that it's one issue that keeps Quora from being its own thing and keeps it to more like a broadcasting mechanism or like a middleman. Like Blip.fm too, which is its own community, but is really a middleman when I want to like share a song I like on Twitter. And it keeps that site from having too much of its own personality, I think, sometimes. The other thing about Quora that kind of bugs me, there's two more things. One of them is sort of a minor quibble. The other one is I feel like the design, especially on the front page, could be better. Like, they've kept the Facebook aesthetic. It's very simple. It's very easy to like see lots of questions. And that's one thing they do really well that we always struggled to do with Mahalo Answers, was how do we serve up just a ton of new content every time you come? So even if you log in 2-3 times a day, you're always going to see new questions in areas that are of some interest to you. And Quora does that pretty well. There's tons of new questions, and I like how they have you pick your interests and your areas of expertise, but it's tricky. Even if I've chosen to follow a question, I don't necessarily feel like I'm always hearing back about the questions I wanted to follow. You have to go to this special menu on the side to follow the questions or to see the questions you're following, and then you just get a list. You don't have any sort of interactive, like, here's what's new since you were here last that people have added, and that, I think, is really missing. Like, it doesn't have that conversational, like, I want to follow the thread. And it's a notifications box at the top, but I tend to find those kind of irritating, and I just never really look up there. I just want to get to the meat, the website meat faster. My one final minor quibble is they send you way too much bacon, which are those spam emails. Like, bacon, like being a spam thing that you one time signed up for. So you signed up for Quora. It's not spam. It is bacon. And they send you so many of these emails, and if you want to go turn it off, you have to go through these crazy convoluted menus and turn off this feature and this feature and this feature. It's like 20 options. And like, I get that you may want to break it down like that, but one button that's just opt out of emails would be really great. So that's kind of a quibble, but one that bugs me. So that's my review of Quora. That's today's LonsTV. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I will see you back here tomorrow for Web Series Wednesday here and on TubeFilter. You can find that link below. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I will see you later.